Welcome back, Irish fans. Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. It's a fully high school recruiting season now. Transfer portal season has gone a little bit long, but can't ignore high school season at all. And although Notre Dame hasn't got a 2023 commitment, they do have a lot of potential to have a really nice class to back up one of Mike Bray's best, J.J. Starling, Don Campbell, and Van Lubin. This year, I think, is predicated on the guards, and that's why I wanted to do this video about the guards first. Notre Dame's offered Aiden Holloway, Laurent Rice, Day-Day Ames, and Marco Jackson. Four guys who I've seen in the top 100 on pretty much every ranking, and four guys who, at least three of them, I think Notre Dame has a solid chance with if they choose to pursue them fully. So going to go into what Notre Dame's recruiting pitch is to guards in this class, why it's so important that they get one, kind of what they're looking for, the common denominator between those four players and guys that they've had some rumored interest in, and kind of talk about those players a little bit, analyze their current offers and maybe their chances in the recruitment at the moment, which I'm not sure is fully up to date, just kind of going off some comments and some common sense things. So going into their pitch first, I think it's important to address because Notre Dame has probably a better pitch than most schools in terms of offering guards, because heading into the year, they will not have Cormac Ryan, Dane Goodwin, Trey Wirtz, Marcus Hammond will be gone by then, and J.J. Starling has the potential to be a one-and-done player, and I'd put about 50-50 odds that he's back if I had to say that today. So a lot of things going Notre Dame's way in terms of guard recruitment. They'll lose pretty much everyone. And then you look at guys like Blake Wesley, who really thrived in Mike Bray's system, gained Mike Bray's trust, and never really looked back. Prentice Hub. It's also another example of a guy who they can use to recruiting pitch, because you look at Prentice Hub's 4 years, he wasn't always playing super well. Took a lot of flack from the Notre Dame fan base, and Mike Bray still stuck with his guy, even through the tough moments, let him play point guard. Never really took the ball out of his hands, except for a few games over the last few years. Always let Prentice Hub do what Prentice Hub did, and even when it wasn't awesome for the team, Mike Bray stuck with Prentice Hub, and I think he can really pitch that to recruits that, hey, if you're my point guard, I'm going to stick with you and I'm going to give you the ball. I trust that you're going to make plays, and I think that is something that's valuable to recruits and should be, and Notre Dame has a history of doing that. Blake Wesley also thrived from Mike Bray's offense, the free-flowing, trustworthy offense that Mike Bray has. He's trusting that you're going to make plays, and he's not going to take the ball out of your hands very often, even after you make mistakes. And that was a factor in Wesley's recruitment, and that's going to be a factor in these guys' recruitment. We saw how Blake Wesley was able to grow just by gaining experience in that type of offensive system, and now he's going to be a first-round pick next week, most likely. So big selling points there for Notre Dame, and the open floor is another thing. Obviously, this year the floor is going to be about as open as it has been throughout the last 5, maybe even 10 years for Notre Dame. Nate Laszewski's going to be man in the 5 at least a good amount of time. So Notre Dame is going to have a very guard-driven offense, and one that's really friendly to guards because of how much space they have to drive and create. And I think guards in this class are really going to like that. So moving on to a little bit of the disappointing twist to their guard recruiting, Aiden Holloway, based on his official visit schedule, his lack of an official schedule to Notre Dame, and kind of some reports. It doesn't seem like Notre Dame is really in the running anymore for Aiden Holloway, and I'm not 100% sure if that's a Notre Dame thing or that's an Aiden Holloway thing. If I had to guess, it's probably an Aiden Holloway thing. I'm not sure Notre Dame would turn down a top 100 recruit from All-Amir, but I'm not sure that I'm highest on Aiden Holloway out of any of these guards. He's a guy who I really like his game. True point guard, plays at his own pace. One of the best guys at really getting to his spots and rising up, even though he's a little undersized. Can finish among the trees, and one of the best shooters in the class. So lots to like offensively. Defensively, he's also come along a bit throughout these last few UIBL sessions. Has really exploded offensively as well. But I just think being 6 foot hurts him a little bit. And in this era of switchable, positionless basketball, Aiden Holloway doesn't fit in that much if that's what Notre Dame's trying to do. I think Notre Dame does want a true point guard. And kind of looking throughout this class, Aidan Holloway is a true point guard. Laurent Rice is a combo guard who I tend to think is a little bit better at the one. Maybe as he progresses more as a scorer, will be better off the ball. Marco Jackson, I think he's a point guard through and through, and Data Ames, I think the same of. So Notre Dame pretty clearly wants a true point guard in this class, and I'm not sure there's many that are better than Aiden Holloway at being that. I think Aiden Holloway could be a Kennedy Chandler type player in college, maybe a Sharif Cooper type player. I think that's a little bit of a lazy comp. I like Kennedy Chandler a little bit more, which is why Tennessee's in the running. They have that to pitch, but he's an undersized guard that can get to his spots and plays at his own pace. Basically I wouldn't say the complete opposite of Prentice Hub, but if you watch them play, it's pretty night and day. Prentice Hub is a guy who thrives off of getting out in space, shooting over guys, taking tough shots, but Aiden Holloway is not that. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how Holloway's game kind of translates to college, and unfortunately for Notre Dame, that won't be at Notre Dame. I think one of the big things to note also is they lose kind of La Lumiere momentum they had by not landing Aiden Holloway. La Lumiere generally came up to Notre Dame for football weekends last year. Jeremy Fears was there. Aiden Holloway was there. A couple other D1 players were there, along with J.J. Starling. And Starling was helping with his recruitment, and Notre Dame couldn't quite land him. So Notre Dame needs to find a way to reestablish that pipeline. Finding ways to get guys who are in-state at a prep school less than an hour away from your school is a huge recruiting thing for high school, or for a school like Notre Dame in the ACC, where they're constantly having to fight blue bloods. You got to get guys in-state who are super high-level talents. And Notre Dame's a better school at recruiting nationally than most schools in the ACC outside of Duke and UNC. But to lose out on all those guys in state definitely hurts, and they're back to that way, it would seem, with La Lumiere, unfortunately, after getting a huge player in state. So that's all I really got to say on Aiden Holloway. It doesn't seem like Notre Dame's very much in the running anymore, and that's obviously disappointing, but they have offered other guards and can still come away with a really, really nice player in this class, just like Laurent Rice, who's quick, he's shifty, he's fluid. Really like the word smooth when looking at Laurent Rice. Has a really nice floater, has nice length and athleticism, give him a high defensive ceiling. And I really just like his overall game, although he hasn't really played all that well at EYBL sessions, averaging 8.8 points a game, shooting 33% from three and about 50% from the field. Also averaging, I think it's like 3 assists a game, 3.8 assists a game. So the playmaking is showing a little bit, and the scoring ability has shown a lot in some games. Others not so much, but I think Laurent Rice ultimately is a high upside play. I really like kind of his long-term outlook, the fluidity, the size, the quickness. I really think could translate into a really good college player, and the size is something that is really appealing. The athleticism is also solid, and I think he just has a nice feel for the game. Maybe lets it come to him too much at sometimes. So Laurent Rice is a guy I would like to watch a little more throughout the process. I've obviously watched Laurent Rice a decent amount. They offered him, seems like forever ago, it was last summer, and even talked to him during the school year last year, like October, November of 2020. Notre Dame was talking to Laurent Rice before they offered him. So they've been on him a while. It's an Anthony Solomon guy, and I think Solomon really likes what Laurent Rice can bring to the table. And I'd be surprised. I don't know if I'd be surprised if Notre Dame didn't push for him, but it certainly wouldn't be what I'd expect. I would think Notre Dame would try to land him. He's an Ohio guy. I think it's going to be hard to get him out of Ohio State if they want him. They do have a commit at guard in the class, but Laurent Rice plays with him, and I think that Ohio State does still want Laurent Rice. So going to be a really interesting recruitment to follow, and he's the guy I'm most interested to watch play over the rest of the summer. So much upside there, but 8-3 throughout EYBL isn't going to bring a bunch of super high-level teams calling, but if you watch Laurent Rice play, you'd think his stats were a lot better than that, and you can see why he's a top 100, top 150 player in his class. Day-Day Ames, also a guy who plays EYBL and has fared a little bit better, 18 points per game. I'm shooting like shooting a super high percentage, like 37% from three, 35% from three. I was off. My memory did not serve me well there. But Ames is a guy who I think out of all the guards has progressed the most since I started watching him. I started watching Day Ames a little bit as a sophomore when Notre Dame first reached out to him. And he was completely different from all the other guards that they were going after. He was kind of a Andre Curbelo type who was really relying on his speed. Jump shot, I still had questions about and still have a few questions about, but he's really proven me wrong about his jumper this summer, shooting 35% from three. I'm not sure if that number is going to stay where it's at, but he has proved to me that he can shoot it a bit, especially off the catch. I wasn't expecting that, but Data Ames' game is predicated off being quick, being able to get downhill, and he can really make plays at the rim. It's also shown off a lot of passing ability over the last few months, and I've really liked what I've seen. I'm not sure that I was super high on Data Ames when they offered him, but as the years have gone on, I'm a little bit higher on him than I was. He's really grown on me. But guy who can get to his spots, has a little bit of a slow release, but generally gets his shot off, can shoot it better than I thought. And the main thing with him is obviously his quickness. He can finish at the rim, he can pass, and Notre Dame needs all of those things in this class. So Data Ames is a guy that Notre Dame should really be pushing for. Mike Bray, and I believe Anthony Solomon also saw him this week. Also saw James Brown, who's a 2024 target. But Ames is going to be a guy who's kind of going to be tough to get. They have a history in Illinois of kind of closing down that border. Notre Dame hasn't been super successful since I've covered the team in Illinois. The last guy I remember them offering was Bryce Hopkins, who ended up in Kentucky, now transferred to Providence. But guys like Andre Curbelo are a good selling tool for Illinois, and obviously staying in state for a Chicago kid and getting the NIL money in Illinois, and just being an Illinois kid playing for Illinois with the history of guards they've had over the last few years is really hard to turn down. So Mike Bray and staff, if they really want Ames, are going to have to turn up the heat, and I expect them to do that if they want Ames. It's going to be tough to get him out of Illinois if Illinois wants him, but I think Bray and staff will try their best. Elmarko Jackson's the last guy, and actually the guy I'm highest on, despite maybe some lower rankings than the other guys. Elmarko Jackson, I'll watch, and I'll think, man, that guy, I thought he was a senior in college. If you'd watch him and you wouldn't see the AAU game, you'd think it was a college basketball point guard. He's so poised, under control at the rim, lets the game come to him, but also isn't too passive. He's not a Blake Wesley level athlete, which I think is why he's got some a little bit underrated tendencies, but he won MVP at one of the Under Armour showcases, I think last weekend. He's a good passer. He can put it on the floor and score, and he'll just score in bunches, and it's not going to be super flashy, but you'll look up and you'll be like, wow, Elmarko Jackson has 20 points, and it shouldn't be too super surprising considering the pretty much full skill set that he has. I've watched a few games of him. There aren't many budding weaknesses in Elmarko Jackson's game. He's poised. The thing that probably most impressed me was just how easy he makes it look around the rim. His hang time is awesome, and one of the games I watched was against the Middlesex Magic with JP Estrella on the other team. I think Elmarko Jackson would just hang in the air, and JP Estrella couldn't do anything about it for a lot of the game. Just finds his spot, gets to it, rises up, and doesn't really let other guys bother him. It kind of reminds me of like an Isaiah Wong with a little more playmaking and less athleticism. And if Notre Dame could add that, man, that would be awesome. I think the quickness is a little less than a guy like Dede Ames, but I just can't overstate how big having that poised, kind of under control demeanor and not letting guys speed him up, that is so big for the next level. And I think Elmarko Jackson could be a guy who's ready to play immediately at whatever school he's at. I'd love to watch more of him throughout the next few months, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I think as of now, could change because last summer at this time I was higher on Rodney Rice and J.J. Starling. Watched more of them, and J.J. Starling really took a leap there. And I almost think that Elmarko and Rodney Rice are pretty similar players. in terms of kind of the profile, but I think Marco is a better scorer, and obviously a guy that I'm really high on in Notre Dame. Has seemed to pick up the recruitment a little bit there. Would like to see if he would be a guy that they really continue to pursue and ultimately could land a commitment from. So really interesting to see how these guys will kind of progress throughout the summer. A lot of them I've seen growth from already, and Marco Jackson is the newer offer, so looking forward to see how he performs over the course of a whole summer. But he's gotten me sold over the last few weeks, and looking forward to seeing more of him. So thank you guys for watching. We'll obviously have more recruiting content. Blake Wesley obviously going to be in the NBA draft next week, got a green room invite, so we'll be covering that next week right after the draft. So thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you guys for sticking with me throughout the year and even throughout some bad years in Notre Dame basketball. Appreciate it, and peace.